The Panthers came into Tampa with even more injuries, and not only did the Lightning blow them out, but the Panthers add even more insult to the injury.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, February 6th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, and it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at Monoman12. That is Nich Fairbanks joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday. You can follow him on X at Prudentia0. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers through good times and bad, as the Florida Panthers have lost 5 of their last 6 games going into the Olympic break. And with the Florida Panthers already without Tobias Bjornfot, who went on IR, Brad Marchand, Aaron Ekblad, and Evan Rodrigues, a Panther made their NHL debut tonight in Mikulas Hovorka coming into the game. They upgraded Jeff Petrie to the top pair for them, and Luke Kunin and Jesper Boquist drew back into the lineup. But with the injuries that the Panthers were already going through in this season, adding more to that, and you get what you got as far as the score for the Panthers, a 6-1 loss against the Tampa Bay Lightning, where although they controlled play in the first period, they were not able to get those second chance opportunities on Andrei Vasilevskiiy, as the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to get multiple goals in the first period, mostly because of rebounds and faster to puck retrievals, as they were able to get second chances on Daniil Tarasov. And penalty trouble continued for the Panthers going into the second period, as Matthew Tkachuk was called for an unsportsmanlike conduct, and the Tampa Bay Lightning added 2 more goals in the second period to make this game blow the Panthers out of the building. And then it turned into fight night in this game, as we got multiple misconducts, a game misconduct from Gustav Forsling, and even a game misconduct from the head coach, Paul Maurice. And Nick, I'm just... It's really hard to find the words to say about this game, because the Colorado game, we saw that as a scheduled loss with what they went through on the second end of a back-to-back, this was also the second end of a back-to-back for the Panthers after a shootout win on Wednesday that I was not impressed by. But there's similar themes, which getting a garbage time goal by Mackie Samoskevich, similar to that Avalanche game. But really hard to pin this on the group that was out there, because after the game yesterday, they said that Paul Maurice said that some players would be playing on only one side of the back-to-back. So this was kind of an expected result.
Definitely was. And, it just goes to show that the depth that the Panthers usually have is starting to dwindle a little bit. I mean, you promote Jeff Petrie from probably the third pairing to the first pairing.
He's responsible for the first goal.
I never want to see that again.
Yeah.
And I did make the comment that he assisted on it because he gave it to Hedman, and then Hagel tipped it right into Petrie's shin that went between Tarasov's pads. So yes, he did score an assist and a goal on that first goal. And then from there, just the decision making and the constant turnovers and the lack of speed that this team had. They control play for the first 10 minutes, and they looked pretty good, but it was your typical Panthers controlling for the period for 10 minutes, having about 10 to 12 shots on goal. And guess what happens? Tampa's the one that ends up with the goal. So it's the same story. I can't blame goaltending 100%. It's a team, it's a team thing, but sometimes you do need your goaltenders to make a save, and I felt that Tarasov could have made a couple to at least keep this game somewhat close. But at the end of the night, the game turned out to what it was supposed to be or what it was going to be. And if this game got out of hand, and we'll see what happens at the next one.
Yeah, that's the end of the season series between these two. So it'll be a while before these two teams meet again, which Tampa Bay won the season series 3-1. And this, as far as the theming of this game and just the trend, this kind of reminded me of that game against the LA Kings a few years ago in the President's Trophy season, which the half the lineup was out due to COVID during that time, and then the Panthers had no chance. Crazy enough, there was an NHL debut that night as well. I'm gonna give you a hint of who it was. They were playing in this game tonight as well. So, do you want to know who that was that made their debut? Mikulas Hovorka made his debut tonight. Who made their debut against that game against the LA Kings?
You might have to give me a second, but
Bottom six.
bottom six. Honestly, don't know.
Cole Schwint. So
okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. He made his debut that night against the LA Kings during that season. And that him and Vilmanis, which I'm surprised that Vilmanis did not get the suspension from a suspension after the hit yesterday on McAvoy. Yeah. But those two guys were really starting to really force play into the offensive zone. But you have multiple chances that don't convert for the Panthers there. There's a post from AJ Greer. And then later on, there's like where Mackie Samoskevich is driving in the second period after it's 3-0, and then he flashes his leather when he's on the forecheck on Victor Hedman there. So it's just a product of just the fact that on one side you can get the saves for Tampa Bay, but on the Florida Panthers side, they were unable to. So that really just comes to the difference between these two. And the fact that it turned into what it turned into based on the blowout, based on all the storylines from the series last year, which all started with the Hagel hit on Barkov, and it just goes to show how nobody has forgotten about that. The elbow from the forearm from Seth Jones to Hagel as well. Ekblad from Hagel last year. And then I'm surprised Greer wasn't targeted much in this game, or even though Sabrin played. I'm surprised there wasn't really any activity from them. But the fact that it turned into what it did with Matthew Tkachuk taking matters into his own hands, going after Kucherov right off the bench. They showed the replay. He was going right after him after he interfered with Niko Mikkola there. But then it just turned ugly from there, which we got a second Brandon Hagel Tkachuk fight. We saw the JJ Moser Forsling fight, which that was the misconduct due to the rule of the second fight in it. But really, that's just what to expect. And I hope Ray Ferraro said this on the broadcast. I hope that these two teams don't see each other for the preseason because of the fact that the games don't count. This could have rippling effects in case there's another blowout like this in the next regular season.
Yeah, definitely does. I mean, it is now a full-fledged rivalry. I mean, you probably couldn't say that a few years ago, unfortunately, but playoffs matter, winning matters, and when both teams are trying to win, they're going to beat each other up along the way. So the rest of the Atlantic is probably loving this right now. So kind of gives them, a possible edge. But I'll be up front with you. I didn't have a problem with what Tkachuk did. Kucherov in the past has been known to dip his toes in the water a little bit and take a dive. And I think he went down a little bit easy when, him and Mikkola came together. And, I felt like Tkachuk just said, hey, if you're going to go down, I'm going to make sure you stay down. And, the whole thing started, blew up from that. And what was JJ Moser doing? Like just punching Forsling like 5 or 6 times with his gloves. And I think it was the 6-1 where Forsling just said, you know what, I'm going for it. And basically showed Moser up. And Forsling's not a guy that you would think would be able to throw down or take anybody on or anything, but he held his own, and he didn't stop as soon as they got on the ice. But as far as this rivalry goes, I think it's going to be another notch when I'm not sure if John Cooper's ever been thrown out of a game yet.
Yeah, not that I know of,
So,
at least.
but between the two, I mean,
Yeah.
But it may happen, and
Mhm.
I just think that Paul Maurice probably has had enough. He's asked everything he could of his players and the team right now, and now they're going into the break where hopefully they can reset, especially the goaltenders, and the team can get healthy and make a run. I'm hoping over the next 27 games.
Yeah. And Paul Maurice was not only mad because of all the misconducts, but this was happening at the beginning of the game because there was one icing call that he was really upset about. And I was pretend that you're watching me watch the game. Usually when I see an icing, when I'm typing notes on my laptop, I'm putting my hands up. Okay, that's an icing. Literally like impersonating the referee. And I'm just like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I was literally looking at my screen, and then you see him barking. So that was piling on to everything that was going on. And funny enough, Garrett Rank was one of the referees. He was one of the refs during the Panthers Senators game that everybody gets a 10-minute misconduct. So crazy how he was officiating that one for the Panthers there with how crazy this one got. And I mean, when you're looking at 10 guys on the ice and seeing who did what, not surprised that it took so long to put everybody 2, 5, and 10, and then saying Tkachuk over the intercom, saying, "Oh, he doesn't have a game misconduct. Oh, he doesn't." But it didn't even matter because the guys who came out of the box after the Lightning scored on the power play goal on Bobrovsky, those guys didn't step on the ice again. So really didn't matter from there. So it was basically a misconduct for those guys. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more of our 3 duds of the game, and then we are going to discuss the moment when we knew this game was lost. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure that you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorites, riding the underdog, or building one of the last same-game parlay, this is the game everybody has been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's a perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl feel even more exciting to the final, from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, just bet $5 and get 200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I'd like to thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day on the nation's #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. And if you haven't already, go check out the Everydayer Club. It's an ad-free audio feed for the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. It's an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more. And back here with Nich Fairbanks on another edition of Fairbanks Friday as the Panthers lose 6-1 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it's a Panthers loss, which means we are going to discuss the moment when we knew the game was lost, and also our 3 duds of the game. And I will say, before we name our duds, is when it comes to our duds today, this has probably the least amount of weight than any duds that we will say all season based on the personnel out there. At least that's how I'm going to present this. Number 3 dud is going to be power play 1 for the Panthers. Had a chance to at least close the deficit, especially when they had a 5-on-3 opportunity and didn't have a lot of the possession there at times. But I want to also mention an honorable mention, Matthew Tkachuk, for putting his team in a horrible position after that confusion off the faceoff and then an unsportsmanlike conduct. So honorable mention there. Number 2 dud is going to be Jeff Petrie. Just absolute pizza to Victor Hedman, and then resulting in the Panthers falling behind early. Who knows what the Panthers could have done as far as keeping that game a little bit closer, and then just having their spirits knocked out of them when they were controlling the play, and then you're already down. And number 1 dud, I got to go with Daniil Tarasov for the Panthers. But again, not a lot of weight in this one when it comes to him being a dud, because also the puck retrieval for the defense was just not great around him. But at the same time, the rebounds were out of control, just like last night in the shootout win for the Panthers over the Bruins. So number 1 dud, but take these for what it's worth there for what the Panthers put out there. So your duds, my friend.
Yeah, so I'll go with number 3 dud. It's Tarasov. I think one of the goals I really wanted him to have back is the one that he didn't necessarily catch, but he let go for some reason. And then Tampa was the first one on it, and they ended up scoring like 3 seconds later. Sometimes you just need to grip the puck, my guy, or at least, put your glove over it to get a stop because your team is reeling, and, have them reset. And I didn't feel like that was a time, for him to release the puck like that. Second, I'm going to probably say, like, anybody who came in to this game that was not in the last game, you didn't do anything. I don't feel that you guys really were in it at all. I'm talking about Kunin. I'm talking about Boquist. These guys that just, I don't know, they don't move the needle at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then my first dud is going to be Jeff Petrie. Whether he's on the power play, because Balinskis can't play 60 minutes a night right now, and every power play, you're a veteran. I think you should have a little bit more, I guess, knowledge of, what you're able to bring. And if you can't, then maybe you should not be on the team anymore, or at least not be in the NHL. I'm very surprised that Florida had maybe 2, maybe 3 NHL defensemen tonight, especially with the fact that they had maybe some younger guys that, in my mind, probably could have benefited from coming in and actually probably would have put up a better showing.
Yeah,
But
and
those are my 3.
Yeah, and this isn't the OEL Nate Schmidt that we were hoping to get out of
Hell
Jeff
no.
Petrie here. No way, and especially the fact that he's a lot older than those two when they did sign with the Florida Panthers. And yeah, although Boquist did get the primary assist to Mackie Samoskevich on the garbage time goal, which, call it what it is, it's just you wish that these goals for Mackie could come at like better clutch moments for him more often, even though he had 7 shots on goal. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that, especially the fact that in the third period, the Panthers got a 5-minute power play shortly after when Curtis Douglas went after Niko Mikkola for the aggressor penalty. So a lot of that power play time came for the Panthers then. And just to name the guys in the box for the Panthers there during that Donovan Zabrango, Niko Mikkola, Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Reinhart, Sam Bennett. And then for Tampa Bay, Darren Radish, Brandon Hagel, Kucherov, Gensel, Yanni Gord. And then there was confusion about Gord going there and everything. So yeah, there's a lot of guys to like. I had to make sure that I wrote that down. I'm just like, okay, who did what? Just like we mentioned in segment number 1. But the moment when we knew the game was lost for me was that 5-on-3 that the Panthers had. And not only did they not have a lot of zone time there, but the Lightning were playing keep away during that. And just when you have so many guys coming to the puck to try to separate, they were able to still go enter the zone, circle back, and even pass through multiple zones back from the offensive zone all the way to their D zone, where there's no Panther covering the third guy of the 5-on-3. So I'm like, how does that happen for even the personnel that they put out there? That one, I'm just like, that was the thing that I was probably most annoyed by in this game. And the fact that the Panthers didn't convert there to at least cut it, I'm just like, no way. It's not happening. And that was in the first period. So the fact that we didn't have the confidence that the Panthers were going to come back even in period number 1 just goes to show what kind of hockey game this was. So your moment.
Yeah. I was going to go with the 5-on-3, but the fact is that I felt that if the Panthers were able to actually kill off the penalty that Tkachuk made or took at the end of the first period, if they were able to just kill that off, then maybe there might be some life because they're still only down 2. But they Tampa Bay drew up a nice little rebound play, and it's been working for them. So why not give it to Darren Radish, who's on a ridiculous streak right now, and who's going to get paid this summer? Let him just bomb it, and then you have one of the best goal scorers in the game, Gensel, right there, just to pick up the garbage. So it was right around there. I think that's when all of the wind went out of their sails, and then from there it's just we know what happened afterwards, so we can move on.
Yeah, that was assist number 62 for Nikita Kucherov on the season. The point pace that he's been at since January 1st. I mean, he's right back in the Art Ross race, the MVP race, which you can argue Celebrini, Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, he's back up there. And there's a stat when Tampa Bay scored first, they win 80% of the time. So, and Vasilevskiiy, in his last 16 starts going into this one, he only has 1 loss, and it was an overtime loss. So just looking at that and based on what the Panthers were bringing in, it was always going to be a really tough hill for this Florida Panthers team to climb here. And now the Panthers, not only were they not able to close the gap on Boston, but they have the same amount of games in hand, and multiple teams have already passed them in it. So that's a big blow for this Panthers team, is last in the Atlantic and barely ahead of the second to last place team in the New Jersey Devils after tonight's action, which only 1 game has left to go final. But here we are at the Olympic break. But we are going to discuss the Panthers' playoff chances as of right now. On the other side of the break, we'll get to some housekeeping here, and then we're going to discuss the players going to Milan, and then give our Super Bowl picks on the other side of this break here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And if you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your posts at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for the show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just resume buzzwords. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs help put your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your posts to the people who have the best match for your role, and that's what makes a real difference. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get premium placement it deserves on Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now to support this show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, as the Panthers lose by a final score of 6-1 against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And no updates on Daniil Tarasov per Paul Maurice after today's game. And that's what's going to be the messaging this whole season when it comes to injuries after. So let's just get used to it when it comes to that, which that one did not look great as he put no weight on the right leg. But right now the Panthers playoff chances are at 21.5 according to ManyPuck. So that's where the Panthers are. And also the Panthers did not only did they call up Mikulas Hovorka for this game, which I was very excited about because I saw him at development camp, right-handed shot who is big body, although he turned it over on the 6th goal of the game in his debut. I'm very excited to see how he develops and also even though it might be a short-term fix, I'm excited for him. But the Panthers also did some housekeeping based on some contracts, as Ryan McAllister and Josh Davies had both of their contracts terminated by the Panthers for unconditional waivers there. McAllister a few days ago, and then Josh Davies just now, as Davies has been playing in the ECHL this year, while Ryan McAllister played 2 games in Savannah and then had his contract terminated here. But Nick, the Panthers are going into this break for Milano Cortina, and it's great to see that 10 Panthers are going to be represented in the games. And had Barkov, Nosek, and Jones been healthy, they would have broken the record for the most players going to a single Olympic Games by the 2002 Detroit Red Wings, who had 11 that year. So the positive I want to take away from this going into this break, which I was watching the women's games earlier, which was kind of weird to not see digital ads because I got so used to them. But that's neither here nor there. But I'm excited to see the Florida Panthers representation because it feels like a little bit of a reward for what they've done these last few years. But then there's another part of me that is saying, yeah, there'll be guys who will get breaks, but then you see how many more miles that these guys are going to get going into these games and then traveling internationally. That's what has me even more worried and possibly even more doubt about the Panthers making a possible run in this sprint. Let's call it what it is. It's going to be a sprint to the finish.
It definitely will, and we're spoiled.
Yeah.
The fact that this organization or this team was going to be living up to original 6 team and sending over possibly 13 players over to an Olympic games, it's ridiculous. I mean, maybe 10, 15 years ago you'd maybe say they would have 1 or 2, if that, and now you have 11. It's funny how time and things can change and how much great hockey we've been able to witness from this team. But, I hope that both teams from North America here have a healthy tournament. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I do feel especially bad for the guys who are not able to go anymore, like Cirelli and Point that couldn't go, and now they've been replaced by Jarvis and Bennett. It's something you don't ever want to see. But, back to the Panthers, having that many players over there, as you said, it's going to be more miles, but, maybe it's a different type of game for them. They'll be able to be excited. They'll have something that they're playing for right now, and maybe that'll be enough of an injection where, they have enough left in the tank to get to the sprint and then finally hopefully sneak into a playoff spot. I'm still here. I'm waving the Panther flag that we're still going to make it, but tonight and the last week has made it that much harder. But let's just, again, this is the golden age of the Florida Panthers. Let's just bask in it. Let's enjoy it, and hopefully everybody has a good tournament and comes back healthy.
Yeah, right now the Panthers are looking like Squidward after he was attacked by the sea bear, and he just keeps going, and he's just still pursuing even after all that. And it's crazy because even in a season like this where the Panthers are over the cap, there is still talk about a superstar player possibly going to Florida and Artemi Panarin, who ended up being traded to LA. He said that LA was his only preferred destination. And then there's a report today about Tampa and Florida being on that list, but they just couldn't make it work. And obviously they're not going to rule out Barkov this early. It just came down to timing, because if they're going to rule out Barkov for the season, it's going to come in the beginning of March, right before the deadline. It's not going to be on February 5th when you think that you could still have a chance here. Even though you're more hopeful than me, to be honest. So it just timing wasn't work, but it's all about fitting the present and the future. The future next year and the year after, because he signed a 2-year contract, would have worked, but it just did not work in the Panthers present. That's just the only issue that came to that. But hey, the fact that this team is still in the conversation for those guys, for a superstar of that caliber, I'm very excited for what's to come, because of the fact that these guys are going to still have guys under contract for multiple years. I mean, that's assuming that we have that we see this team healthy and back intact come October opening night of next year, knowing that it's going to be a longer off season than what we've seen in the previous 3.
Yeah, I mean, and it most certainly might be. All you want is your team to compete, be at its highest level, and unfortunately, the Panthers have not been able to do that. I mean, it's been great for what they've been able to accomplish. I mean, they're fighting. Nobody can say otherwise. And Paul has asked everything of them, and they've given him more. It's just sometimes things like these injuries, they happen. And unfortunately, they just don't have the bodies right now that are experienced enough, or, they're not there to, I guess, take over a game or replace a Barkov or a Tkachuk, which you can't do. But, you don't have what those guys bring, and it makes it harder day on day and practice by practice and game by game. So you just hope that, again, if they do come back next season really healthy, that they don't have to deal with another superstar coming in. As much as it would have been nice to have an offensive weapon like Panarin, I don't think he really fits the mold of what Panthers do and how they play. It would have been just purely offensive. And I'll tell you right now, the first time that he would not back check or not win a battle along the boards and not support the team, the team would let him know about it, and I'd be screaming at my TV. I'll be upfront about that. But it's probably better for LA too, because they're basically on the end of, what they want to do. I mean, Kopitar's done. Their coach is basically on thin ice. I mean, if they can't get him to, help the team, coach isn't going to be there, and Kopitar, unfortunately, is going to go into the night, with his career, and that's going to be it. So happy for them, but even happier for the Panthers that they did not make a move that they didn't really need to make at all.
Yeah, it's funny because you were talking about how the moment he doesn't back check, they'll let him know. I just go back to a conversation when Nate Schmidt first got here for the Panthers about them talking to him. It was like, hey, we don't do that here. They were never specific about what it was that he did, but they had a talk with him saying, and he talked about how that conversation that the team had with him really stood out. So it just goes to show. But hey, we never thought that Vladimir Tarasenko would fit here, but he ended up winning a cup with the Panthers. But hey, nothing they can do now. And with that 2-year contract, it fits also Doughty's contract, who will expire in the same year. So we'll see how the Panthers manage this, but also go for and what they do in the summer, which we still will have plenty of time to discuss that before July 1st. So, but we will have a lot to talk about in these next 2 weeks based on the Olympic break. We're going to have all Olympic coverage here on the show. Most definitely, that's what our discussions are going to be surrounded by. And then when the Panthers do return to practice, which on the 17th, we will hopefully see some guys who've been out for a while, possibly be in some line rushes, and then maybe return on that very first game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. But this Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday between the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots. And I hope that there's no BS like we saw in that Super Bowl in 2014, as these two teams will rematch. And I'm going to read Jacob's prediction because I forgot to ask him on the show on Wednesday, but I did text him. He said that he's predicting the Seahawks to win 27-17. So your prediction, and then I will give mine.
I am also going to go with Seattle, and it's based off of their defense. So I'm actually going to take it a 20. I'll take a 24-10 final.
Okay. And I'm going to go with Seattle as well. Obviously, I'm a Dolphins fan, and I'm just tired of New England. And I believe that the Patriot fans will be. This will be the maddest that we've seen. We will see Patriot fans be since the New York Yankees lost the division series against the Toronto Blue Jays. So this is yeah. So just a few years of suffering, and and they're all of a sudden back, entitled and spoiled fan base. We talk about us being spoiled. That is one spoiled fan base, and I do not want I don't want them to sniff anything of the record for most Super Bowl wins. By the way, if they lose, it'll be the record for most Super Bowl losses. And yeah, I'll definitely be bringing that stat up if they end up doing so. And then all the other Super Bowls that they've won, Spygate, Deflategate, you name it. So I will talk my talk there for sure for when it comes to the game. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you guys, as always, for listening, and tell everybody where they can find you online, my friend.
Thank you for having me on again. Everybody, you guys can follow me on X at Prudentia0. I hope everybody's healthy, stays healthy, and comes back from the games healthy, especially you, Armando, because I know you're going to be covering these games a lot. Drink a lot of tea, my friend, because you don't want to sound like me.
I'll be getting up at 5 a.m. for these games, so I'm very excited for sure about that. And for you Panther fans out there, enjoy this break and enjoy these games where you don't have to worry about falling behind the standings here, as we've seen too many times of so many letdowns this season. So that's what I want to send out to you guys. And this team will be back in 3 weeks. But Nick, thank you so much, and see you next week as we may talk some Olympic hockey here on the show. So yeah,
that'd be great. I'll see you then.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Steer Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.